Hello Army, welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, welcome, because today we have a story that is going to hit differently from a lot of the content we cover, and the reason it is going to hit differently is because of where it comes from. Today we are not talking about what Army said about Jimin. We are not talking about fan polls or fan voting or fan-organized recognition. Today we are talking about what Korea said about Jimin, specifically what the users of TheQoo, one of the most influential and most widely read online communities in South Korea, said about Jimin after watching him perform during the Arirang World Tour. And what they said was not just praise. What they said was that ParkJimin belongs on a list of the 3 most legendary stage entrance moments in Korean entertainment history, a list that also includes 2 of the most acclaimed and most respected actors in the Korean film and television industry. So get comfortable, because this one is going to take us somewhere really powerful and really beautiful. Let me start by explaining why TheQoo matters, because for those who are newer to following Korean entertainment discourse, the significance of this specific platform needs some context. TheQoo is not a K-pop fan site. It is not a BTS fan site. It is not a space that is particularly oriented toward any specific fandom or any specific type of entertainment. It is a general Korean internet community, one of the most active and most widely read in the country, where people discuss everything from current events to film and television to music to celebrity news to everyday life. The users of TheQoo include K-pop fans, certainly, but they also include people who have no particular investment in K-pop, people who follow Korean film and drama, people who are simply engaged members of the broader Korean internet culture. This distinction matters enormously because it means that when something trends on TheQoo, it is not trending because a coordinated fandom pushed it there. It is trending because it genuinely captured the attention and the conversation of a broad and diverse online community. When K-pop content trends on TheQoo specifically, it typically means that the content has crossed over from fandom interest into mainstream cultural interest, that it has become something that people who are not necessarily fans of the artist in question feel compelled to comment on and engage with. And when a post about Jimin goes viral on TheQoo with comments that compare him favorably to actors of the caliber of Kang Dong-won and Lee Young-jae, it is a marker of mainstream cultural recognition that goes well beyond anything that fan enthusiasm alone could produce. So let's talk about the post itself, because the framing of it is genuinely extraordinary. The post that generated the massive TheQoo response was titled something along the lines of Korea's 3 great legendary stage entrance moments, and the 3 names on that list were Kang Dong-won, Lee Young-jae, and ParkJimin. Now, for Army who are deeply familiar with Jimin's world but perhaps less familiar with Korean mainstream entertainment, let me give you some context on the other 2 names on that list, because understanding who they are is essential for appreciating the full significance of Jimin's inclusion alongside them. Kang Dong-won is one of the most beloved and most respected actors in South Korean cinema. He has been active for over 2 decades, has appeared in some of the most critically acclaimed Korean films of the last 20 years, and has a reputation for bringing an almost hypnotic quality of charisma and presence to everything he does. He is the kind of actor who, when he walks into a scene, causes the energy of that scene to immediately reorganize around him. His stage entrances, the moments when he appears in public spaces, whether at film premieres or award shows or other events, have a quality of magnetic arrival that Korean audiences and Korean media have commented on for years. He is, in the language of Korean entertainment culture, someone whose presence is undeniable. Lee Young-jae is the Korean actor who became globally famous for his role in Squid Game, the Netflix series that became one of the most watched and most discussed pieces of entertainment in the history of the streaming era. Before Squid Game made him a household name internationally, he was already considered one of the finest and most compelling performers in Korean film and television, with a career spanning decades and a reputation for the kind of commanding, deeply felt screen presence that makes audiences unable to look away. His star power is of the old school, deeply earned variety, the kind that comes from years of consistently extraordinary work rather than from a single viral moment. These are the 2 names alongside which the TheQoo post placed ParkJimin. Not other K-pop idols. Not other performers from the music industry. 2 of the most respected and most culturally significant actors in Korean mainstream entertainment, whose reputations were built over decades of work in a completely different artistic context from the one Jimin operates in. And the TheQoo community, a community that includes plenty of people who have no particular investment in K-pop, looked at those 3 names together and said yes. This makes sense. These 3 people belong on the same list. The specific quality that the post was recognizing was stage entrance presence, the quality of how someone arrives, how their appearance in a space transforms that space, how the moment of their entrance creates an immediate and visceral response in everyone who witnesses it. And the comments that poured in response to the post make clear that this is not a superficial quality about attractiveness or celebrity. It is something deeper, a quality of presence and energy that operates on a level that precedes conscious analysis, that hits you before you have had time to think about what you are responding to. The comments about Jimin specifically are worth going through in some detail, because they are remarkable both for what they say and for who is saying them. These are not army posts. These are anonymous TheQoo users, many of whom appear to be encountering Jimin's performance energy as something genuinely new and surprising to them. One commenter says they had no idea blonde long hair would look this good on him, suggesting that this is someone who knows who Jimin is but was not necessarily following his recent transformation closely, and who was genuinely surprised by what they saw. Another says his visuals are insane these days, the kind of casual, almost reluctant acknowledgement that comes from someone who was not looking to be impressed but found themselves impressed anyway. Then the comments get more specific and more meaningful. One user writes that he comes out looking so ethereal, like almost innocent, and asks if that was always his vibe, the question suggesting that this person has some familiarity with Jimin but is noticing something in the current era that they had not previously registered in quite the same way. Another says he looks like the main character of a romance fantasy novel, which connects directly to the broader nickname phenomenon we have discussed in previous videos and reflects the same instinct to reach for fictional and mythological language when trying to describe what Jimin's presence communicates. Another commenter notes that he really stands out during this comeback in a totally good way, observing that you can tell he has been taking such good care of himself, and that the long hair suits him so well. But the comments that really stop you in your tracks are the ones about his dancing and his performance energy. One user writes that he is dancing like his bones are literally going to break, and then adds, "This is exactly why it is worth going to see an artist live." That sentence is worth sitting with, because it captures something profound about what live performance is actually for. This is not a comment about choreography or technique or visual impact. It is a comment about the experience of being in the presence of someone who is giving absolutely everything they have, who is not holding anything back, who is pouring their entire physical and emotional self into the performance with a completeness and an intensity that makes the audience feel, viscerally, that something genuinely extraordinary is happening right in front of them. That feeling, the feeling of being present for something that is costing the performer everything, is what makes people say it is worth going to see an artist live. And Jimin, in the Ararang tour performances that generated this TheQoo discussion, was giving that feeling to audiences in a way that was being noticed and articulated by people who had no particular investment in loving him. Another commenter writes that Jimin really seems to be a natural-born performer, that he literally loses himself on stage in the best way possible. And another, who says they saw Jimin at an awards show and was watching him dance and could feel that his knees were literally going to snap and could feel that energy even from far away. That detail, feeling the physical intensity of his performance from a distance, feeling it in your own body even though you are just watching, is one of the most specific and most meaningful things you can say about a performer. It means that the commitment and the physical investment in what he is doing is not just visible but palpable, that it transmits across space and reaches the bodies of people who are watching from far away. And then there is the comment that perhaps best captures the full dimension of what was happening in those performances and why Korea was paying attention. A user writes that they officially became a fan after seeing Jimin's lion performance at Gwangwonmun. They describe having heard about him for a long time, having spent over 10 years feeling like those years as a muggle were such a waste. They note that he just got discharged from the military last year but his idol form is insane. They say his dancing is one thing but his visuals are just incredible, he looks like he is in his very early 20s, his skin is so good. And then, the line that matters most, he seriously dances so well. Not he is attractive. Not he is famous. He seriously dances so well. That is the recognition that matters. That is the recognition that places him on a list with Kang Dongwon and Lee Youngjae. Let's now spend some time understanding why this TheQoo moment is so significant in the context of Jimin's career and reputation specifically, because I think there is something worth unpacking here about how cultural recognition actually accumulates. Jimin has always been recognized within ARMY as someone of exceptional performance ability, someone whose dancing and stage presence operate at a level that is qualitatively different from what most performers achieve. This has been true from the beginning of BTS's career, and ARMY has been saying it consistently and passionately for years. But the nature of fandom is such that claims made by fans about their favorite artists are always subject to a certain discount in the broader cultural conversation. People assume, reasonably, that fans are biased, that their love for an artist amplifies their perception of that artist's qualities and makes them unreliable witnesses to objective excellence. What TheQoo represents in this specific context is the removal of that discount. When non-fans, when people who have no particular reason to be generous in their assessments of Jimin, look at his performances and reach for the same language that ARMY has been using, when they independently arrive at words like legendary and ethereal and natural-born performer and born with long hair, it is confirmation that what ARMY has been seeing is real and not the product of bias. The excellence that fans have been responding to is objectively there, visible and undeniable to people who are looking without the amplification of love. And when that external confirmation takes the form of placing Jimin on a list with Kang Dong-won and Lee Young-jae, two names that belong to a completely different world of Korean entertainment, a world with its own standards and its own hierarchies and its own criteria for what constitutes legendary, it is saying something very specific about where Jimin's presence and performance ability actually stand. They stand at a level that transcends the categories of K-pop. They stand at a level that the mainstream Korean entertainment establishment, through the spontaneous and uncoordinated expression of the TheQoo community, recognizes as belonging to the conversation about the most compelling and most commanding stage presences that Korean entertainment has produced. The second TheQoo post that was part of this viral moment adds another dimension to the story, focusing specifically on what netizens were saying about Jimin at the actual BTS concert in Korea. The responses there described someone dancing at the absolute limit of his physical capacity, giving so much that observers were genuinely concerned about whether his body could sustain what he was asking of it. This is not a new observation about Jimin. ARMY has watched him perform through injuries, has watched him push past the visible limits of what his body was telling him was enough, has watched him consistently choose to give more rather than less when the stakes feel high. But seeing that same observation made by people watching from outside the fandom context gives it a different weight. These are people for whom Jimin's well-being is not a personal stake, people who are simply watching a performance and being moved, almost against their will, by the totality of what he is giving. One of the most striking things about all of these comments is the specific quality of involuntariness in them. These are not people who sat down to write effusive praise about their favorite artist. These are people who saw something, felt something, and then went to write down what they felt because it was too significant to simply absorb and move on from. The person who said they officially became a fan only after seeing the Gwangwoman performance after spending what they describe as 10 years as a muggle was not looking to have a conversion experience. They had one anyway, because Jimin's performance was powerful enough to create it. That is what legendary stage presence actually means. It is not the presence that people who already love you find extraordinary. It is the presence that reaches people who had no intention of being reached and changes them anyway. This is the quality that connects Jimin to Kang Dong-won and Lee Young-jae on that TheQoo list. All three of these people share this ability to reach through screens and distances and preconceptions and touch something in the people watching them that those people did not necessarily know was available to be touched. It is the rarest quality in performance, and it cannot be manufactured or learned. It can be developed and refined, and Jimin has clearly been developing and refining it his entire career, but the seed of it has to be there from the beginning. And it clearly was, because the casting director who saw him at 13 described exactly the same quality, that almost hypnotic pull, that quality of extraordinary that announced itself immediately and completely, that the TheQoo users are describing when they talk about his Era-Rang tour performances more than a decade later. What has changed is not the fundamental quality. What has changed is the scale on which it is being recognized and the breadth of the audience it is reaching. In 2011, one casting director felt it and acted on it with enough urgency to break her company's own procedures. In 2026, an entire online community of mainstream Korean entertainment consumers is feeling it simultaneously and going to TheQoo to write down what they experienced. The quality is the same. The recognition has grown to match it. For ARMY who have been watching and loving Jimin throughout this journey, this TheQoo moment is one of those rare occasions when the external world catches up to what you have known all along. It is the specific satisfaction of seeing someone you love recognized not by people who are predisposed to love them but by people who simply encountered their work and could not help responding to its excellence. Korea said legendary. TheQoo said he belongs with Kang Dongwon and Lee Youngjae. The people who watched him dance like his bones were going to break said this is exactly why it is worth going to see an artist live. And all of that, together, says something that ARMY has been trying to communicate for years, that ParkJimin is not just an excellent K-pop performer. He is one of the most compelling and most irreplaceable stage presences in the history of Korean entertainment. Full stop. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, it genuinely helps the channel reach more people who need to hear this story. Drop a comment below telling me your reaction to seeing Jimin placed on that list alongside Kang Dongwon and Lee Youngjae. Did it surprise you, or did it feel exactly right? Subscribe if you have not already, share this with your fellow ARMY, and I will see you in the next one. Purple you all.